Hello.
Welcome. How are you, Alex?
Fabulous. I'm in. Thank you.
Okay. Well done. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Erica's just asked us to, she's just posting it on the Facebook.
Okay, cool. So do you want to mute me? I mean, I can mute myself.
Mute yourself, yeah, it'll probably be easier.
And then just say, okay, and then I'll come in.
All right. I'll just zip through I'll pop the screen on when Erica's back, then we can just go through the rules or the manners. Okay, so we've got another 10 seconds.
What do you mean you got another 10 seconds?
Erica said to wait 5 minutes, so I'm watching the clock.
Okay, I'm back. Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, are we ready to go?
Yes.
All righty. Then welcome everybody to the Cape Town Together Co-Learning Task Team Workshop. Our host today is Alex Kruger, the pioneer of permaculture, and the host for this meeting is the Meischke Way Foundation. Just before we get started, a few meeting manners. The meeting is being recorded. Your microphones will be muted by me, the host. We will suggest that you turn off video as it will eat your data. If you have any questions, just use the chat box to add questions or any additional items. If you use the raise your hand button in the bottom left of the screen if you'd like to speak at the end for 30 seconds. The format of our workshop is going to be in 4 segments presented by Alex. Each segment is 8 minutes long. Alex has agreed to take questions for 2 minutes at the end of each segment. So please use your chat box to ask questions. And then the agenda of workshop 1 of 4, the topic of this is seed saving, the big picture, the global situation, what does it take to grow seed, what does it mean to bank seed, and then not time games, sorry, it's supposed to say time frames to set up seed banks. All right, with that being said, Alex, I'm going to mute myself and hand over to you.
Okay, welcome everybody. I think we probably will have participants joining us. Am I on or off video?
You are off video right now.
Fabulous. Is that okay?
That's fine. It'll also help save your data and your internet connection line.
All righty. So I'm a little unused to just talking into empty space. I'm used to having really interactive sessions in class. So let's see how I go. Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for your interest and commitment, or what's the beginning of your commitment to seed saving. Could I maybe just ask for a show of hands, thumbs up, how many people are aware of the global seed situation and how we got here? And would I be able to see that, Andrea? Can people indicate how many of you are aware? Was that very difficult? Well, it
No,
looks like it's
let's just have a
difficult.
look at all the participants. Everybody, everybody. You
Okay,
can
Bianca,
all.
not aware.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Okay, thanks, Chris. All right. Okay, so I'm going to gooi, as we say in Afrikaans. Ek gaan nou gooi. The ramping up of industrial agriculture really happened after World War II, when we were sitting with a lot of interesting technologies that had been developed. Okay, I can see that little message. Developed during the war. And we had just kind of very recently come out of an industrial revolution. The use of fossil fuels had accelerated everything dramatically. And World War II had come up with a lot of interesting innovation, to put it in a very neutral kind of way. Post World War II, there were a whole bunch of agreements around chemical warfare that caused the, somewhere very interesting now, the shutting down of chemical factories, because governments agreed not to do mass murder of each other using chemicals. And the upshot of that was that we had a swathe of factories all over the world that were producing very expensive chemicals, and then that was very quietly diversified into pharmaceutical medicine and agricultural products. And swiftly followed by something called the Green Revolution, which was an international so-called developed world response to perceived poverty and perceived food poverty around the world. So we rapidly developed these lovely food packages that went with bags of chemicals, irrigation schemes, plows, a very Western orientated form of agriculture was then rapidly exported to the world, which was now much more reachable because of flight and fuel sped up vehicles. With also post World War II, I think we saw the expansion of large corporates. And with the Green Revolution, there was a need to homogenize crops, because it was I think we've lost something like 98% of our food crop diversity in the last 120 or 130 years. When you're a big company trying to sell people seed, it's much easier to keep your lines small or your lines narrow. So you've only got 10 basic varieties as opposed to 350 specialized heirloom, highly adapted seed varieties. So heirloom means that we're passing it down from generation to generation. It's like, and that's the other word, is heritage seed. So we had the stripping away of our genetic diversity. And also what happens there, and I'm sure all of us can reflect on this, when you are close to your food, and maybe some of us on this forum still are connected to agricultural families or grew up in families close to the land. There are special foods that happen at special times of year, and they've got a particular flavor or a particular cultural memory attached to them. So not only did we see the rapid expansion of the corporatization of agriculture, we also saw the drastic erosion of culture through food losses. And in some cases, like India and Africa, wholesale replacement of staple foods with these new wonderful commercial crops that you could speed up using chemicals, and they were hybridized and they were just marvelous, So, I mean, agriculture has probably been one of the stupidest ideas we've come up with on this planet, if we look at the results now. So I don't know how my time is doing, Andrea. I'm not timing myself because I can't see my clock. I'm glad I'm funny.
You're fine. I'm keeping tabs on you.
So is everyone okay? I'm going to carry on. It's quite a dense topic, and there's a lot you can read around it. I will promise to put up a little bit of a reading list. A lot of this information for me is now anecdotal because I've been with it for a long time. Okay. So we have this bad idea called commercial agriculture, and it thinks it's feeding the world. And if you read the literature, commercial agriculture, bless the souls of all the farmers who have gone into this, but it actually is not what it thinks it is. And so I'm afraid that seed saving is not just a nice garden hobby. It's actually a very political act. And it's got social justice and environmental justice and economic justice embedded in it. Right, so where are we? So why on earth can we as small growers make a difference? Well, the first thing is that if we all live in different areas with different climates, then we can grow a beautiful seed that's really highly adapted to our specific contexts. We can also choose to grow food that's really important to us. So we can choose to grow spices and flavors that link us to our heritage, that maybe link us to our roots. We can grow things that are linked to our celebration, to our spirituality or religion. And we can, in many ways, take back, the word control is really a hard one for me, but take back custodianship of that which nurtures us through food and through culture. And what's beautiful about this food growing movement in Cape Town is the reclaiming of the value of food, the reclaiming of the value of collaborating, and the reclaiming of a food growing culture. It's a very powerful thing that is actually happening. So for those of us who are engaging with this, we are offered a very limited set of options. And now the session, I'm afraid, has gone out. It's not doing 4 blocks anymore. It's just doing what it wants to. But I will pause. So now we're sitting with really what I would call a sanitized, a thinned down version of what was a beautiful global food heritage. And also you must know that all the food crops started rapidly moving around the world with the very big ships, and definitely before that there were elders who were, much elder cultures who were zipping around the world. They just weren't written down, and they were moving food crops around the world too. So for example, if we want to look at genetic diversity loss, I think we see 3 to 4 potato varieties in our average supermarket. And if we're in the fancy schmancy section of the supermarket, we might see some pink ones. There are actually more than 200 types of potatoes that come from, and they all come from Latin America. That's their source continent. I personally have grown little round purple ones, little knobbly flat purple ones, red ones that are yellow inside, very smooth, beautiful ones, lovely masher ones. So the point is that there is so much out there, and it's so exciting. So, some people might be stimulated to grow seed because they feel it's it's something very important to do, and it's a very political thing. Other people might grow it because they're absolutely diversity mad, and it's absolutely fine. Whatever your motivations are for growing and becoming custodians and nourishing seed and sharing it, it's great. Okay, so there's the diversity culture aspect. There's also the way the seed is being produced, from the organic or regenerative space. We know we're not damaging. If we're growing local seed grown in local conditions, then we know that we're growing seed suited to our area that isn't going to need artificial propping up. For example, if I try and bring into my context, which is semi-arid desert, tropical plants, I'm already causing a lot of trouble for myself, because tropical plants have got long day lengths because they all hang out at the equator where the day length is long. And here I am bringing them into the temperate area, into the latitudes. I think, are we Capricorn? I think we're below Capricorn. I always confess to being
below
confused.
the equator.
Yeah, we're somewhere well below the equator. I should be able to say this. But so when we come to this latitude with tropical stuff, we are trying to grow stuff in what's often shorter day lengths. So we're setting ourselves up for failure. So the production of localized seed means that we are creating seed that is suited to particular areas. So maybe now's the time for some questions. Hey, because I've been yakketing. I can see 10 there.
Okay, so I was going to suggest that we do a quick summary of, for those who've just joined, of what Alex has been talking about. She's been talking about the social justice aspect that's attached to seed, how we can make a difference as growers, taking back custodianship of what's important to us and reclaiming our food growing heritage and the excitement around the CTT movement that we're all part of, as well as the genetic diversity and the loss of seed. Something that's particularly close to my heart is potatoes. So I was thrilled to hear that there's 200 types, especially the yellow mushy type is my particular favorite. And then particularly the fact that we're not, by using local seeds, we are not harming our own environment, and just how important that is. Okay, so at this point, are there any questions? If you would like to just unmute yourself, please go ahead and do so. Any questions? You can pop the questions into the chat box.
Not seen any questions yet. One suggestion though, that Andrea, if you could just share your screen again.
Sure.
With the program.
Okay, will do. Let me just open it again.
Okay, so I'm going to carry on. I'm talking to you from the Klein Karoo, and I think you can hear all the birds going off in the background. So then the other thing is, if we are interested in developing a network of seed bankers, which I think is why people have dialed into this radio station today, then we're also setting up a network of diverse growers, and we're setting up what's called a distributed network, which means that the information and the seed genetics are held in the hands of many, which means that there's no control drama, and it means that there's a certain level of resilience, because one type of seed could be grown by 10 different gardens, which means that 3 of those gardens could have a disaster and 7 would still have that beautiful genetic stock in their hands. Okay. And to get away from the corporate control of seed is really, really important. I will pop up a link after this on that Google Drive thingy where we stash everything. Looking at the new commentary on the new Seed Bill Act, because what is happening now globally, and this is why your interest and actions in seed banking are critical, is that the definition of seed in South Africa has, up to now, as far as I understand, included bartering, giving, or trading seed. That's the definition of sale has been expanded to that. But what we're looking at is that there's an attempt to control the passage of seed outside of the commercial space. So, for example, my little seed bank, which I'll maybe show you another time on another talk, potentially, if it gets any bigger, could be illegal, because I haven't registered my seed with the authorities. I haven't had it tested, and I'm probably not paying a levy to them, because there's an attempt to regulate the movement of seed. Now, for us in Africa, that's very, very serious, because our small farmers and small gardeners live on sharing seed with each other and seed banking from harvest to harvest. And we have very beautiful and deep seed saving traditions and crops in Africa that can only be maintained through person-to-person or peer-to-peer seed networks. And that genetics and the culture and the heritage that I spoke of earlier, being connected to the food, cannot be mediated by corporate entities. So unless we go over a certain scale, we're kind of under the radar with saving our own seed. But there is a certain thrill knowing that we might be illegal. I mean, I quite enjoy that. So I think unless we're producing over a certain scale, we might be under the threshold. But do enjoy the fact that you potentially are illegal. So what would it mean to grow seed? Well, to grow seed is a bit like getting pregnant. Seed, from when you plant a seed in the ground to harvesting the seed, is anywhere from 6 to 9 and sometimes 12 to 18 months. Because you're actually waiting for your plant to go through its full cycle of producing that which you eat, and then it realizes either the days are getting longer or shorter, and then it goes, oh, time to make bloomies, and it makes the flowers, and then the flowers, one way or the other, they get pollinated. And then they go through another process where they form seed, and that's the bit that we then collect. So if you want to grow seed, you need to be willing to give up space in your garden for a certain time. So for a certain time, that area will not be able to do anything but grow seed. And now after 20 years of experience, I promise you that if you are saving seed in an area, it's best to let that area just save seed. Because when your plants go into the mode of seed saving, they mobilize other nutrients in their bodies to make good seed, and they also start repelling the water-loving bacteria and fungi in the soil, so your seed crops tend to start drying out your soils, which is not lacquer for the new seedlings if you've accidentally planted next to them. So what you need is space that you can then give up for time, for a certain time period. So seriously, if you're thinking about seed growing, think about getting pregnant. 9 months is a good number. Okay, I see the commentary. I'm just checking the commentary. So that's the first thing. That's us in our little garden setting up seed. What we will need to do is we'll need to coordinate. So this is where we're going to be looking at some of the pragmatics in the next 3 sessions following this. You know, different types of seed need different numbers of plants. So for example, with lettuce, I can get away with 12 to 24 lettuce plants to make sure that I've got a genetic depth and a breadth in my seed that I save from those lettuces. But if I'm working with what we call a herding seed, the millies and the grains, then we're talking like 50 to 200 plants. So if you want to save millies, you need a big piece of land. If you want to save lettuces, it's a much smaller proposition. Okay, now I see there's a little question. Oh, that's the same question. Okay. So it's a time issue and it's a space issue. And it's also a matter of, you know, being willing to give them really good conditions, not to go overboard with making it too lacquer for the plant, because, you know, if you spoil a plant too much, it doesn't develop its innate resilience. And what you've got to realize when you're saving seed is that you are collecting information. So the seed that I take off a particular plant holds the whole experience, life experience of that plant in the seed, in its genetic code. So if it got too much water and too much fertilizer, then it is trained for that. If it's got a disease and recovered, it might have disease resistance. So that whatever your plant has experienced in its lifetime before it makes seed is encoded in the plant. So that's also so really interesting. Okay, so Davina, yeah, I'll get into the small space a little bit later. I see your question there, love.
Okay, Alex, time check for you. So we've got our 2-minute question session open now.
Okay.
So let's take a question from Davina. Any hacks for small space gardens? 9 months dedicated to seed as a pinch.
So Davina, there I'd go for the 6-month variety, sweetie, and maybe with your hanging garden stuff, you can hang up 3 times 4 of one particular lettuce variety and let it do its thing. And maybe what I should explain, may I go a little bit more into the
Go for it. Yep.
The number of seeds, number of plants. Okay. So what happens is, if there's this terrible thing that happens to plants, it's called genetic depression. And it's not about the plants being sad. What it means is that you haven't had enough of a particular, let's just use a word, red Roma tomato. If I've only got 2 red Roma tomato plants, only the characteristics of those 2 plants are going to be caught in the seed, because they all need to cross with each other, or they're all going to have slightly different experiences. Sorry, in terms of tomatoes, they're self-fertile. So if I've only got 2 red Roma tomatoes, I'm only going to have their eienskappen. But if I've got 20 tomato plants and I collect seed across 20 and I pack seed from 20 different plants, I'm going to get all the different little nuances from those 20 plants in my little bag of seed that I'm then going to plant on. So what you're doing there is you making sure that you've got a range of characteristics you want. If, however, you've only got 1 tomato plant and you collect seed from it, it is not the end of the world. What we can do then to address Davina's issue, let's say we want to grow red Roma tomato, Davina, and we've got 10 people who can only grow 1 plant. Then all 10 of them grow red Roma tomato, and we collect seed from all of them. That way we make sure we've got a broad base of diversity. And this is why the network of seed banking is important. But it takes coordination. So the seed bank is going, what does it mean to set up a seed bank? It's going to require a coordinator, and it's going to require someone who is a wonderful person with detail. Okay, good. Can I carry on?
You may. Any other questions? Just can you give some feedback on Davina's comment regarding the anti-food sovereignty?
Where is that comment?
That spoke to the geopolitical, the overview that you did originally about the fact that by growing local seeds, and we had to be restricted in terms of numbers.
Okay. What? That's anti-food sovereignty, having to register seed. Patent ownership like. Okay, yes.
Yes.
Because, I mean, this is why the word food sovereignty is just so much nicer, because it means that we're aware of everything that's happening in the food chain and in the whole cycle of seed to seed. And I suppose just to add in there then, Davina, that I mean, why your comment is relevant in the geopolitical is that these big companies like Monsanto and Bayer and Syngenta, the ones that control the kind of crops we eat and what they need to be fertilized, and then that goes hand in hand with the supermarkets that decide what's going to get sold and the banks that decide what's going to grow. I mean, I said to a woman the other day about farmers, I said, you know, farmers aren't actually farming, the big commercial farmers. The banks are farming through the farmers, because they will loan you money for what you can grow. So if you as a big commercial farmer go for your annual loan back to your farm and the flavor of the year has changed, or the crop that makes the most money is more popular, then the chances are that you will be encouraged or dictated to as to what you have to grow. So there's an unholy relationship between seed companies, agricultural chemical companies, banks, governments. It's quite a mess. But the wonderful thing is that our distributed network of seed growers can very quietly, with no fuss, and no one can stop us, get on with preserving genetic diversity, cultural heritage through food, and a future through saving seed. Okay, so what does it mean to bank? It means, okay, that you've got to be organized, you've got to have your communication set up nicely. Once you've gone through the pregnancy and seed phase with your plants, then you need to have a little shady, cool facility to store your seed in. Your storage of your seed is critical. So there's the seed growing and the selection and the collection. And there's, once you've done that, and we'll get into the technicalities of that, then you need to be able to store your seed somewhere cool and dark. So for me, in this hemisphere, that's on the south side of your building, and it's in a cupboard with closed doors, and it's in a glass jar with a well-sealed lid, because the enemy of seed is light and humidity. So, but a seed bank, the physical place where all this stuff, can literally be, if you're a small garden, 5 jars under your counter, you know. And if we're looking at a distributed network of growers, then it's a very good idea for each grower to keep what we call genetic stock at home. And then there's very good potential for bringing all the genetic stock to 1 or 2 central places where it's stored in a cool place. I was extremely fortunate to have the opportunity to fly out from Spain through Switzerland on a course I was teaching. And I was very bored in Switzerland and went walking. And randomly came across oh, sorry, that's my dog and the cat, came across a seed production garden and a seed bank. And I mean, there they were really, really high tech. There the seed bank was a temperature regulated freezer fridge kind of setup. We don't have to go there. We don't need to do that thing they've got in Norway. It just has to be cool and dark and sealed. Sorry, my cat clapped my dog. Are there any questions?
I was actually going to ask you about the place in Norway, so I'm glad that you raised it. If you can talk about, if you are aware of the fact, are they collecting from people like us, or are they just collecting from the big companies like Monsanto?
I can't answer that off the cuff right now. Sorry, that's not sitting in my brain at the moment. I have, sorry for everyone here, I'm not one of those encyclopedias. I store the information that is necessary, and the other stuff I leave to other people. I can find out about that one in Norway and feed back to everyone, or somebody else who's feeling enthusiastic can.
I can look it up.
There's another part of a question here from Davina. Yeah, yes. So Davina, in the next few lessons, we'll look at this easy, middle, and difficult seed to save. So one of the little challenges with plants is they like to have sex, and because that's how they keep their genetics going. So when we're all starting to think about, you know, who we want to be as seed bankers and what we want to bank, then we need to look at complexity, you know. So you get a range of seed, and I'm sure if you all read that little handbook, you can read it before the next session and you'll be familiar with these terms. So things like tomatoes, for example, are self-fertile. Their little sex organs are inside the flower. So it's really hard for insects to come along and put the wrong pollen there. It's really hard for wind to come and blow the wrong pollen there. So those are self-fertile plants. Those are really easy to work with, you know. So you can have 50 varieties of tomatoes as long as the plants really don't touch each other and the flowers don't rub up against each other. You can generally safely get uncrossed or pure open pollinated varieties. Lettuces, for example, are very easy beginner seeds. They're also self-fertile, but if you've got a red lettuce and a green lettuce right next to each other and they can maybe bump into each other, or you might accidentally mix up their seed, then you've got a bit of a gedunte. But generally, you know, those guys are self-fertile. It's then there's another lot that, for example, if I have 2 varieties of carrot growing, if I've got Chantenay Karoo and purple carrot growing next to each other and they go to flower at the same time, they will without a doubt cross. I think they're wind pollinated. Or insect pollinated, one of the 2. So for example, if I'm a carrot seed farmer, I need to be, I think, at least half a mile or a mile away from a carrot seed farmer with another variety of carrots, because true as Bob, they will cross. Maize, for example, crosses over kilometers. So then if you're dealing with that kind of thing, you've got a couple of options. You know, you can isolate things in space, so you can make plants really far apart from each other. So this is where suburban seed saving gets interesting, you know. Or you can do things like isolate them in time, and that's a nifty little trick for millies, for example. Is that generally at our latitude we can get 3 crops of millies out in a season. So I could do millies now. Well, no, actually, I couldn't do them now. I could do them in September, plant my one variety, as long as there's no one within a few kilometers of me. And then 6 weeks later, I could put in another variety of maize or popcorn or sweet corn. And 6 weeks after that, another one, because they'll all ripen at different times. So that's isolating in space and time. Okay, we had space isolation, time isolation. The other option, I think that will probably be the best for the urban spaces, is to put little spun polyester cages over your variety. So for example, if you're working with chilies, they are so promiscuous, and chilies will just dominate any pepper in the area, and they'll all cross with each other. They're dreadful. So there you get this little spun polyester cage. So you put a little wooden frame, you put a little cage around them. I'm not trying to put anyone off. I'm just saying these are some of the things you need to do. Seeds and sex. So that fabric, I looked and looked and looked everywhere for that. It's got a special name in America land, and I just couldn't find it here. But actually, it's that blooming white stuff that you buy from Wonder, the frost cover. And that, you know, we can buy in bulk, and we can split it amongst the growers if we need to cage any of our seed.
Is it called trilobal?
No, I can't remember what it's called. It is a T, but it's gone out of my head. So the thing about chilies and peppers, and they're nice, small, well-behaved little plants. When you start getting to the rampaging monsters like the pumpkins, that's probably a good thing for your bigger scale people to look after, because pumpkins cross like crazy. There's like 5 different types of genus in the pumpkin family, and they all pollinate with each other, and some of them pollinate across each other. And that's just, I mean, the pumpkins are a nightmare. I've worked out some very simple things to do there, but if you're in a city, tricky, very tricky, because a space isolation would be 1 mile. But the pumpkin family, for example, is where you can come along with your little paintbrush before the sun has risen in the morning and transfer pollen from the male flower to the female, and then tape up the female flower so she can set seed. So there are some other tricks we can do. The other family that is terribly promiscuous is the cabbage family. So your broccoli, collie, Brussels sprouts, with cabbages, they all cross with each other. And that's quite a technical thing to seed save from. So this is a good reason to get to know your neighbors and go and find out what they're up to. Okay, I think I've talked a lot. Are there any questions? Because I see it's 5 to 1.
Yeah, we're at 28 minutes. Any questions for Alex on what does it mean to bank seed? She talked about it being a very detail-oriented person. You'd have to have a good communication setup, time and dedication. And then very importantly, talking about things like isolation and time and space, especially for us urban growers. And personally, I have to say that I love the allegory of the sex in the seeds, chilies being promiscuous and pumpkins being rampaging monsters. I think we could do a whole new lesson on that.
Very good. Can people do some audio questions? I don't mind audio questions at all. There's all these little microphones turned off.
So here's a question from Chris Orette, which says, are there any seed banks in Cape Town or South Africa already? Alex?
Well, what we've got is we've got little collectors like me and slightly more medium. And then we've got seed selling places like Living Seeds who get growers to supply them. But there are quite a few, off the top of my head, 5 or 6 people I know of who are growing and collecting seed at home, Some of them buy in to sell on. But there's one in KwaZulu. Unfortunately, the SeedBank at Seed in Cape Town went into a decline. Tanya, who used to work at Seed, is a superb seed saver. There's Philippa in Gardenwood, but actually, the person who will really know what's happening in the seed networks is Rushka Johnson from PU, who was a big activist with the Seed Bill, and she connected deeply with seed savers in the rural areas who often are invisible because they're not on the social media. So that whole seed networking question is actually, it's a whole layered question, because it's like you're only visible if you've got access, and that has to do with history and privilege and visibility and data, and yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. So it could be very interesting to tap into her. So the thing is, what we want is, we want to not necessarily right now say, oh my God, there isn't a seed bank. We want to go, okay, who has been saving seed and who's got seed to share? And that could be a really interesting kind of written conversation to have, Chris.
Great, thank you very much. Chris appreciates the answer. Anybody else have any
There's
questions?
Bianca says, one cannot always find the true source. Bianca, I know you, hey. One cannot always find the true source of the seed, so how do novices like me tell the difference? Well, don't panic. As long as it's not hybrid, i.e. it's a forced cross, so you will see if it says F1 or F2, or if it's got a number on the commercial seed packet, then it's probably been fiddled with. So, I mean, the thing is, what I'd also suggest, what's ethical for me as a seed seller, well, I'm actually a very bad seed seller, I'm more of a seed giver, is when you first start seed saving, it's actually ethical to grow out what you've collected and check it out. So why I'm saying that is you can then start buying commercial seed. Oh, but you'll definitely break some laws. Buy seeds in packets and grow it out yourself and give it and sell it to your friends. You're definitely in intervention of laws, which is wonderful. And
yes, we have two other questions. A question
okay,
from,
I'm just answering Bianca's thing about not knowing the source of your seed. Generally, you can grow it out, Bianca, and then after a generation or two, if it's stable, and then it's organic. So then you're okay. So you just have to do what you have to do. Okay, two more questions.
So, question from Mariame.
Okay.
I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. What is F1 and F2?
Mariame, sweetheart, I'm going to go into that in the next session. I think we'll go into some technical stuff about hybrids and crossing. Look, it's a Moorse thing, this, hey? This is not... It is something we can do. You just need to know a few things. So F1 and F2 has got to do with how many times which generation it is in the hybrid thing. And I think what I should maybe do is scratch up some reading material and pop it onto the drive thingy. And then I see Hasnain Abdullah said, how do we get started with the seed bank network? Well, I think we should write to each other. I mean, the way that the CTT Grow thing's been set up is, I suspect it's another WhatsApp group, hey? And then probably someone who's collecting the data in an office somewhere. So you'd meet an admin strong person in the team, definitely, for collecting the info and kind of directing the traffic, who's connected to who. And we'll do a little bit of that towards the end. We'll start working out who wants to grow what. But your team will need an admin person and then a couple of technical people to help with troubleshooting. And then seed swap parties, yeah. And we post seed to each other.
So if I can also just comment, we've got a very, very good point from Erica, who says, just use what we have already, our Cape Town Together Food Growers Initiative. We already have that set up. We have a super strong admin. We've got lots of activists in the group. So let's use what we already have. Okay. Hussein Abdullah?
And I suppose if the conversation gets too detailed, some of the like technical stuff could go offline, but that could be very useful for everyone to learn from, because you can choose one to read. Hey.
And then there's a note from Davina to check in with Bernie Cohen re Gorilla House seed swap picnics.
Cool. So the last thing was the time frames to set up a seed bank. Well, I mean, it's like, so we've all got to get pregnant for 9 months and then we'll have some seed. But so a seed bank is a physical thing, and it can be many distributed physical spaces where seed is held, which is also a good idea because there's security and diversity. And I would say that if we all started growing in spring, or looked at what we could definitely collect this winter from our winter crops, we could start having varieties available in 3 or 4 months' time from our winter crops. Yeah, and it's definitely, if you are going to get into the seed saving and seed banking thing, you need to have a passion for being a custodian, like a collector and a caretaker. That needs to be important to you. Cool. I think that's all I have to say now.
Super.
Would be a great way to enjoy Cape. What's CNT? Oh, how long can we store seeds? We'll get into all of that. Don't worry. Okay. Would be a great way to introduce. I don't know what CNT. The talent exchange. Yes. What I am. Damn. Yes. The carrot I was going to dangle in front of everyone is.
Yes, we forgot.
I've got 60 varieties sitting here. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to grow seed here on this farm again because of our water challenges. And I'm happy to give that into the seed bank, and I sell seed to people, but I do not sell it in rands. I only sell it in the community currency that is found on the CES that Davina has mentioned. Cool. I'll talk about that next time. It looks like people are dashing.
Yes, we have reached our time limit. So at this point, I'm going to, huge thanks to you, Alex, for sharing this fascinating topic with us and introducing us to these fundamentals. Everybody, we will be doing the same thing this time next week. And apologies again for the stunted beginning where we had naughty interweb problems. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye-bye, and thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.